My name is Mary Slatter, and for my AP research project, I was looking at whether or not outdoor exercise can relieve symptoms of seasonal affective disorder in teenagers. So first, before we start, we have to define a couple things. So what exactly is seasonal affective disorder? So seasonal affective disorder, or SAD for short, is a more technical term for seasonal depression. So while everyone can suffer from seasonal depression, it's most common in women and teens, and up to 11% of Americans experience these symptoms. And while patients usually suffer from their symptoms in the winter and fall months and experience remission during the spring and summer months, there have been studies that show that it goes like the other way, but it's most common that patients will experience these symptoms in the winter and fall months, and they will get better during the spring and summer. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So some common causes of SAD are lack of light during the wintertime because it's always very dark and can be gloomy, and an inability or difficulty to exercise and get outdoors, and not being able to participate in activities and things that people usually enjoy. And it's usually extremely difficult when you live in a place like this where it gets really snowy and winters are very extreme. So some common treatment methods for seasonal affective disorder can include light therapy, exercise, psychotherapy, and antidepressants. However, psychotherapy and antidepressants are usually in more extreme cases, so we're just going to be looking at light therapy and exercise. So light therapy, as you can see in this photo right here, is usually when the patient will go into a doctor's office and they will shine a super bright light into their eyes so they can have more light exposure in the wintertime in places that are usually very gloomy in the winter. And exercise, while it's usually not a primary cure for SAD, it can be used to help heighten their mood and cause just a better, have them have lessened symptoms. So why seasonal affective disorder? So the reason why I'm researching seasonal affective disorder is because there's a very large lack of research when surrounding teenagers. And also there's a lack of affordable treatment methods. So light therapy, psychotherapy, and antidepressants are all very, very expensive, and a lot of people don't get diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder because they know that their symptoms will just go away in the spring and summer. So they think, well, since my symptoms are just going to go away, I won't have to treat it. But there's definitely ways that people can lessen their symptoms, and they don't have to suffer through it when there's more affordable treatment methods. So the research question for this specific project is, does outdoor recreation during the winter months decrease the symptoms of SAD in teenagers? So I used two primary surveys for the research methods, one of which is the initial survey, which finds potential causes for seasonal affective disorder. And the second one is a post-survey, which analyzes how exercise can affect the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. So there was three main steps that I took to arrive at using surveys as the best option. So the first, I had to get IRB approval, which means I had to make sure that this was not going to harm anyone and it was going to be morally correct. The second one is I had to send out parental consent forms because everyone who was going to be participating in all the surveys are minors and they cannot participate in a scientific survey without parental consent. And lastly, I had to send out the surveys. So the initial survey contained several questions, which usually had to do with exercise patterns, the number of symptoms that people experienced, and whether or not they do anything to cope. And this was basically to see if I could draw any correlations between the exercise patterns of all the students and whether or not having seasonal affective disorder was impacted by this. There was also a question to see if they would like to participate in the 2-week exercise trial, which would be for the final survey. So the 2-week exercise trial is to have all the students work outside every day for 2 weeks during daylight hours. And this is meant to decrease the symptoms of SAD in the participants. So the final survey goes off of all of the research that was done during the 2-week exercise trial. And this assesses the effects of exercise on seasonal affective disorder symptoms. So the results and correlations that were drawn from this. So the initial survey, there was a lot less correlation than I thought there was going to be. However, if you look at this chart, one of the reasons why there wasn't as much correlation is because everyone who chose to participate in the survey participated in at least one school sport. So there was not a single control group that didn't participate in any school sports, which could have very much skewed the data. So this chart, there's the survey numbers, the number of symptoms, and the participation in winter sports. So the people, as you can see, there's half of the participants in the survey did participate or did experience symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. 1 to 2, which means that it was 1 to 2 symptoms, which is mild, and then 3 to 6, which is moderate. However, when you look at whether or not they participated in winter sport, the people who did experience seasonal affective disorder, all of them except for 1 participated in winter sport, which means that there was no really correlation between participation in sports and whether or not they had seasonal depression. So for the final survey, however, there was a lot more correlation. So there was only 4 participants, but all of those participants previously participated in sports, and only one of them had symptoms of SAD. However, all of these people did experience, there was correlation between exercise and mood improvement. So for survey 1, the students had high intensity outdoor exercise every day. They had no initial symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. They had no initial no initial symptoms of seasonal affective disorder, so they did not experience any change in their mood while they exercised. However, in survey 2, so this person had high intensity outdoor exercise for about 90% of the trial, which is very good, and it means that they're exercising a lot. They didn't have any initial symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. However, they did mention that they do like to exercise because it boosts their mood, which is part of the thing that we're trying to accomplish in this study. So for survey 3, this person had high intensity outdoor exercise every day. They again had no initial symptoms of seasonal affective disorder. However, this person did report mood improvement as well as the sun making them happy, which brings in the light exposure into the project. And for survey 4, this person had high intensity outdoor exercise for 75% of the trial, 1 to 2 initial symptoms of seasonal affective disorder, and reported mood improvement after the 2-week trial. So they also reported that their symptoms got better after the 2-week trial, which, since this is the only person that had symptoms of SID, this is very important. Even though there's only 1, there is proof in the data that it can improve mood and the symptoms. So in conclusion, there is low correlation between causation of seasonal affective disorder and outdoor exercise based on the data. However, there is high correlation between outdoor exercise and mood improvement. And it's also very likely that light exposure is playing a giant part in relieving the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder in teens. So some of the limitations of this project. So unfortunately, there was a very small sample size because the school where it took place is very small to begin with, and not very many people would like to participate in the student body. There's also time limitations because since this project is meant to be done during the wintertime to test the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder, there's a very small window that could be operated on, and also we had to think about if the 2-week trial would be too long or not long enough for people to want to participate. And also there was weather restraints because while it would be great to be able to change the weather, having a warmer winter or a more sunny winter was out of our control. So if people did the 2-week trial in a very warm period as opposed to a more snowy period, that could have skewed the data. So the implications for this research, there is proof that exercise can improve mood, and schools and parents should definitely encourage outdoor exercise, and if an organized sport, at least just to have students get outside so they can improve their mood. And it also can be used as a much more affordable treatment option for mental health issues. So even if it does not cure seasonal affective disorder, it can be used for other things to just help them feel better. So for future prospects of the research, it would be very important for researchers to conduct an experiment with a larger sample size, and especially have a control group of people who do not participate in any winter sports. It would also be important for the trials to be longer that take place because while it was a 2-week trial, there's probably students that could do it for longer, but since it was a experiment that was conducted by their peers and they didn't have any motivation to work out outside for longer than 2 weeks, then that could have been a problem. But if there's future prospects, then we can have this done during a longer trial period. And these are my references.
Good job. Are you good?
I think I'm good.
Okay, so let's start with Mr. Yu, me, and Mr. Jones.
Hi, Mary. How did the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact your research process?
So, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. How did the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact your research process?
Okay, so I personally chose to do surveys, even though there could have been other research done. So the only problem with my research is my gap was that there's lack of research of seasonal affective disorder in teenagers. So instead of like analyzing other people's topics, I decided to do my own and have 2 different surveys. So one of them, it could be to analyze maybe the potential causes of seasonal affective disorder, and one to say like that outdoor exercise actually helps seasonal affective disorder. So, and it was made specifically for the teenagers at the school. So.
How do your findings provide directions for future research in the field?
So my findings did actually support the idea that seasonal affective disorder can be lessened by physical activity and outdoor exercise. So this can be used in the field of research by, first of all, conducting other experiments with like a larger sample size, but also seeing like what the long-term effects of outdoor exercise are on seasonal depression, because they obviously can increase mood in the students who experience symptoms of seasonal affective disorder, but we do not know like the long-term effects. So having a longer trial period could actually really help the pool of research.
If you could revisit your research process, what would you do differently and why?
If I could revisit my research process, I would probably choose to have more people in the study. So instead of just using people at our school, I would try to use people from like all around Utah, and because that would give a bigger sample size, again, because that was a very big limitation of my project. And I also think that having, starting like earlier in the season, because when I was doing my project, winter was starting to like wrap up, since it was started to wrap up a little bit earlier. So I think that that would be more efficient for research.
Good job.
Good job.
Thanks, Mary.